Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on her. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on her. Melt her, mold her, fill her, use her. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on her. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Melt us, mold us, fill us, use us. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us.
Everyone wants to be happy. And St. Maximillian Kolbe said, "There does not exist a person in the world who does not go in search of happiness." People, as Brother Bob had mentioned earlier in this meeting, they often search for happiness in the things of this world. It's interesting that he said that because those very exact words were in my talk, and he did not know that. Such as people might think, oh, if only I had great riches, then I would be happy. If only I found the man or the woman of my dreams, oh, then I would be happy. Or if only I were young and beautiful, then I would be happy. These are examples of looking for happiness amid this finite earth and among finite creatures in material possessions which decay and ultimately fall apart, along with those broken dreams of happiness. Well, I have this little poem that I heard years ago by Dr. Leo Biscaglia called "If You Want to Be Happy." Take a look. If you want to be happy for an hour, take a nap. If you want to be happy for a day, go fishing. If you want to be happy for a week, get married. If you want to be happy for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want to be happy for a lifetime, help others. What? Okay, that sounds counterintuitive, that for you to be happy, that you would help others, and then on top of that, to suffer? Well, you might be thinking, I think I have somewhere else to be. Wait, come back. I have another message here for you. The key to happiness lies in this notion on slide 4. Since we are each made in the image and likeness of Christ, our only hope for happiness is by taking steps to perfect in ourselves that image of Christ within us to become like him. Well, let's explore these ideas that honestly a normal person would maybe run away from, but Father Kolbe is an example that we are meant to be happy right now. To the untrained heart, it might seem odd to describe St. Maximillian Kolbe as a happy saint because you may or may not know the story, but he was born into oppression in a war-torn country. He died alone. He was martyred, killed in a concentration camp. Yet despite these dire circumstances, he believed and preached happiness, even in a prison camp. Well, his lessons can help us all learn to find happiness in the best sense. When Father Kolbe used the word happiness, he meant more than that passing kind of happiness found in this life. Father Kolbe professed a happiness that is rooted in union with God. This is the key to understand how a person can be happy here and now. Father Kolbe, you may recall, is the one who started the militia of the Immaculata. It's just known as MI. It's a worldwide evangelization movement founded by St. Maximillian Kolbe over 100 years ago in 1917, about the time of World War I. That encourages total consecration to the Blessed Virgin Mary as a means of spiritual renewal for us, you, me, and society. The MI movement employs prayer as a main tool in the spiritual battle with evil to deepen knowledge of the gospel and our Catholic faith and to spread devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. He said that giving oneself totally to the Immaculata as a victim with apostolic intent embraces his specific apostolic or apostolate and spirituality. All right, well, that sounds nice, but what does that mean? It means that during your life, the road in your earthly existence is covered with small crosses. And again, just earlier today, we heard Linda say she had this inspired message. Like, this is so beautiful how the Holy Spirit weaves into our prayer meeting. She said the little struggles are the stepping stones to holiness. Linda did not know that exact message was contained in my teaching for today. So I just feel like the Holy Spirit is just touching upon all of us here, uniting all of us in this. All of us have unpleasant things to contend with in our day-to-day life. Am I right? You might have a difficult family situation. You might have a relationship problem. You might have just received a scary medical diagnosis or suffered a financial setback, any number of things. Well, in the next slide, here is St. Kolbe's key. The acceptance of these crosses is a willed, like a chosen decision to do penance. When suffering is embraced for the sake of love, it purifies you and actually makes greater love possible. And Jesus and Our Lady can help give us that grace. After love, well, suffering, believe it or not, is the most universal and cohesive force. In other words, in the next slide, happiness equals holiness. All of us are called to be holy. Therefore, all of us are called to be happy. Through our obedience to God, by accepting those crosses that we endure along the way, those little struggles that we all face, that way we are then united to God and can then experience authentic happiness. All right, it's impossible to have true happiness outside of God. Again, you might be questioning this statement that no happiness can occur outside of God. And you could think, well, okay, when I fell in love with my spouse, that was great happiness. Or when I see my children or my grandchildren, that gives me great happiness. Or maybe sitting in your pajamas at 10 in the morning, eating cheesecake and binge watching your favorite TV show. That might feel like the epitome of happiness to some people. Well, we have to consider two ways of looking at happiness. The first is seeing that fleeting happiness of this world, like Brother Bob had mentioned earlier in our meeting. The kind described as the examples that we just mentioned about love and cheesecake. And then the second type of happiness is the one that St. Maximillian Kolbe is talking about in slide 11, that Our happiness depends on our holiness, and it will be found in unexpected places and circumstances. Believe it or not, happiness can be found amid even intense suffering, because in suffering, we are united to Christ. And Father Kolbe's life is an example of this. Prayer is of great importance in uniting your will to the will of God. Vocal prayer, in particular, the rosary, is valuable in this way. Praying the rosary each day with your heart can really, truly lead to happiness. Uniting our will to God's will is the essence of holiness, said Father Kolbe, because it's actually the essence of love. If one wishes to be a saint, love with all your being and with all your will. Love is conformity to Christ. Imitation of Christ is the means of this conformity. One imitates Christ through a life of obedience. All right, so what does this conformity and imitation of Christ look like in a person's life? Come on, like this does not sound fun at all. And you're right. Father Kolbe's way is contrary to human nature that tends to focus on what we want. In other words, to imitate Christ, even in small steps, like our sister Linda mentioned, can advance our spiritual journey. It can increase our holiness and in turn, our happiness. Here's an example in slide 15. I love this one, of bearing others' faults. All right, if all of us were perfect, what would we then have to put up with in our neighbors? For God's sake, we have to learn to love others. Well, there's the commandment, love thy neighbor. Oh, that one can be a piece of cake, right? My neighbor, he lives way over there. I hardly ever see that guy. Oh, wait, you mean love thy neighbor as in the people who live in my house? Oh, ugh. That guy that leaves the wet towels on the floor, the one who drinks all the milk and then puts the empty carton back in the refrigerator, that guy? Oh, that's a whole other commandment. Oh, that one is way tougher. Well, in the next slide, the imitation of Christ tells us it's in these times of adversity, when we get annoyed with others, that shows who is of the most virtue. Yeah, this is a tall order. We need to come up with a response to annoying situations and people that is more in imitation of Christ. And it is not easy. But if we can even sometimes respond with love like Christ, instead of blowing a gasket like, I can't believe you did such and such, whatever it might be happening in your life. If we can sidestep the part where we get upset with someone, then suddenly our small acts of love done for God become instruments for us in our union with God, and we advance a little more in our spiritual life. Well, that sounds a little bit more doable. And this next slide is, I think, a little nugget of gold. We would gladly point out the ways in which others are not perfect, and yet we neglect to amend our own faults. To imitate Christ is to be patient in bearing others' faults. For you have many faults in yourself that others suffer from you. Ouch. There's some right in your face reality. We're often blind to our own faults, but boy, can we find the faults in others. I'm sure many of us have not considered how others suffer because of our faults. Imitating Christ in these small ways can help us grow just little by little in holiness. and therefore in happiness. And yeah, it does go against our human nature, but it is the key to a happy life, according to Father Kolbe. And he's a saint, so I'm going to listen to him. Being a true Christian, hey, you know what? It ain't for sissies. If we rely only on our own energy and our own efforts and strength to overcome our crosses, we're not going to see the success that we would if we enlist the help of Jesus and Our Lady, the Immaculata. And we do this through prayer. Father Kolbe says grace is necessary, and we can count only on help from heaven to accomplish this. The easiest and surest help, says Father Kolbe, is through the Most Holy Virgin Mary. In the next slide there, another help to anyone looking for the key to happiness in this life is through total consecration to the Immaculata. Father Kolbe describes it as the surest, straightest means of reaching perfection. Mary is our hope for sanctification and a key to happiness in this life. Mary is a created human person. She is the daughter of the Father. By nature, she is like every other human being, but by the work of God, Mary is the most perfect of creatures. She is the most perfect likeness of the divine essence in a creature purely human. Please find the book, Total Consecration to Mary by St. Louis Marie de Montfort, and read it. It can change your life. St. John Paul II actually said that it put him on a completely different path, which led him to then become a priest and on all the way through Pope and to becoming a saint. In the next slide, happiness, well, it makes up for in height what it lacks in length. The desire for happiness exists in each of us, and it's unable to be satisfied by any created thing on earth. It must have an end, and that end must be God. Union with God, it's our final end as humans. I mean, that's where it's going to end. And therefore, it is the source of our happiness and holiness pursued through obedience to God's will as an act of love. Only in becoming like him and uniting ourselves to him through such things as suffering and love will we find our natural human desire for true happiness. And the degree to which we accomplish this is the degree to which we will be happy and holy. According to Father Kolbe, the best way to find happiness is through the Immaculata, who is the purest and happiest of all creation. Mary is the bridge between us and the most sacred heart of Jesus, which is where we will find the key to a happy life. The end. There's a couple of the resources here are the books, and we're giving a plug to Cornerstone Books in Santa Fe or at your Catholic bookstore or Amazon. I mean, you could just get it so quickly. I'm telling you, that book can change your life.
Okay.
And that's the book here that I took these little nuggets of wisdom from.
I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. One more time. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul. Rejoice, take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. We exalt thee. We exalt thee. We exalt thee, O Lord. We exalt thee. We exalt thee. We exalt thee, oh